you guys know who I am, and if you guys don't, if you guys have seen pictures of me, or maybe this is the first time you've ever seen me, I want to start fresh today. My name is Sarah Ramadan, and this is my transformation story. This is the first time I share this story with anyone. I feel that I have been suppressing a lot of details that I haven't had the confidence of sharing. But this week marks the 3-year anniversary from beginning my recovery journey from anorexia nervosa. I want to share with you who I once believed I was and who I know to be today. I want to share with you guys the continual growth that I have learned along this journey. I have waited so long to share this story with you guys. I was afraid to reopen chapters of my past. I was afraid to feel feelings that may still exist there. But what leads me today into making this video is how proud I am of my story, how proud I am of myself. I have come so far, and I want to honor this journey. Another incentive that continuously drives me into wanting to share who I am on social media is the notion that if my videos and the content that I share with you guys can serve you in any way, shape, or form, then it is worth it. Because I know personally that I needed a person to listen to tell me that things were going to be okay. I believe that in my past, these videos would have served me to watch someone share their journey, to show me that it is possible and tangible to live a happy and healthy life. And so if I can do that to anyone today, these videos are worth it. Thank you for coming along with me on my journey. Let's begin. I want to start off when I was a child, because like Steve Jobs once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking backwards. I don't believe what I suffered with was random in any way. I believe that every single event and series of events caused an uprising of the unease that I felt in my adolescent teenage years. When I was a child, I was the definition of a dreamer. I dreamed so big. I simultaneously wanted to be a ballerina, a rock star, a princess, an astronaut, a scientist. I think I just threw everything on the table. I dreamed so big, and that was okay. I was never once told as a child that I was dreaming too big. I was born into a loving family, 2 parents who loved me so much. I had a very happy childhood. Something else about me was that I could not sit still. I was extremely active. If there was a tree outside, I had to climb it. If there was a ball in the field that was sitting for too long, I had to kick it. Staying still was not my forte. There was something so exhilarating about moving my body. With a crazy, hyperactive child in mind, my parents needed something to do with it, so they started to put me in sports at a very young age. I did several sports like soccer and running and ballet and gymnastics. I learned a lot of things being on sport teams, and I'm so grateful that my parents did that for me because I truly did discover my love for athleticism at an early age. Alongside my athleticism, I excelled in academics. A key word my teachers used to describe me in the past was enthusiastic. I was always so keen about learning. I found a great passion in understanding new things for the first time. In terms of friends, I had lots of friends. I was a social butterfly when I was a kid. As soon as there was a new student in school, I had to just jump on that kid. I loved meeting new people. I loved making people feel comfortable, and I almost felt like it was my responsibility to do so. I was socially involved. I excelled in my academics, and I loved sports more than anything. But one unifying theme that binds these 3 things together was perfectionism. I don't think I can pinpoint a time where perfectionism rose in my life. For me, it's been a part of my childhood for as long as I could remember. But the thing about perfectionism was I never knew the word at the time. I simply know this now because I know what it means and I know what it entails. But as a kid, it was called high achieving. It was called trying my best. It was called wanting an A+. It was called being unhappy if I didn't achieve anything but. It was called being angry with myself if I felt I let my family, my teachers, or myself down. But like I said, at the time, I didn't know this. So I carried on in elementary school, thinking that it was okay to have these standards, that I was only trying to do my best. Socially, this perspective isn't discouraged, it's actually encouraged. So at the time, these notions and ways of thinking were translated as good things. Perfectionism continued forward up until my teenage years. When I entered high school, it was a big change for me. I wish I could say my perfectionism maintained itself, but unfortunately, my perfectionism intensified. As a teenager, you're dealing with a variety of changes. You're going to a different school, you are meeting new people, you're starting to look differently. I started to feel that there was an image that I continuously had to uplift. Because of all these changes, there were more expectations. All of a sudden, I cared more about how I looked on the outside. I made sure I would wake up every morning, straighten my hair pin straight, I would make sure that I packed on a ton of makeup to conceal so-called imperfections. There was an image that I strived for, and it was Little Miss Perfect. And like I said, my perfectionism didn't maintain itself. It only intensified. And it got to a point when I was in the 10th grade that I had enough. I was tired. Anything I started to do was no longer good enough. No matter how high my score was in school, or how great I did one day at soccer practice, whatever happened, it was never good enough. I began to feel so tired of being a failure. I almost felt like I couldn't control any part of me, because anything that I did try was never enough. The theme I use to describe this is control. I wanted to initiate success for myself and actually trust that the process is enough. I wanted a way that I could measure my process, something that isn't going to be biased, something that I know for sure will make me happy. I wanted something tangible. I wanted to feel my success, and I wanted to feel my expectations being met. I just didn't know how. But I remember in the middle of grade 9, I was in the PE change room with some girls, and one of them mentioned that she was going to the gym after school. I was really surprised as to why she would go to the gym if we just had PE class. When I asked her, she told me that she thinks she needs to lose some weight, and that she's exercising 2 times a day to make sure that she loses weight faster. When I went home that day, I thought about her goals of losing weight. I thought about the controlled procedure of dieting. I thought about the discipline, the hard work, the reward, and the way that it can just be simply measured by a scale. It hit me when I thought, this could be the answer to my problems. I was tired of being upset with what I was achieving. I was tired of letting myself down. If I was to lose weight, I would be working hard, and there would be proof behind it. And I thought, numbers don't lie. Numbers will accurately show me that I am succeeding, no matter what my mind says. I decided that day that I would go for a week, cutting my lunch in half. The next week I stepped on the scale, and I saw the number drop by 3 pounds. I remember throwing my hands up in the air, like, yes, I did it. In an instant, that number became much too large. I felt ashamed of myself for celebrating a number that big. I made a goal next week to completely omit my lunch for the day. And when I returned back to the scale and I saw the number drop, I was never satisfied. This was continuous for the remainder of my grade 10 year. My weight was plummeting to a very low weight, but I couldn't see it. Every day when I looked in the mirror, I saw the same body type. Nothing changed. This is called body dysmorphia. When my parents told me to eat, I would make excuses like, I'm going to the library, or I have a soccer meeting. I would layer myself up in clothes so they won't see the weight that I've lost. If them or my friends got suspicious, I would tell them that I just feel a little bit sick, or that school's sort of stressing me out. But one day in the 10th grade, I was getting changed in my room, and I accidentally left the door open. I was in a tank top, and my mom walked in and saw my thin frame. My mom started to cry. She said I looked like a skeleton, and that she can't believe she's never seen it before. I remember I was getting ready for soccer that day, and she told me I could not go because I would just fall on the field. I told her I had to go to soccer, Mom. I told her that that was my life. She finally told me that I could go to soccer if I agreed to go visit the doctor with her tomorrow morning. The next morning, I met with my family doctor. My family doctor is an incredible man who has worked with my family for years. And seeing him used to always feel like a reunion every time. I used to always come with exciting news to him about my academics, about what I'm doing in school. But when I saw him this time, it was different. When he laid eyes on me, he started to well up in tears. I looked at him and I told him that I felt fine. I didn't see anything wrong with what I was trying to achieve. But to him it was so clear. He started to write a referral on his desk. On the top it said, Eating Disorder Clinic, and my heart sank. When he finished signing the paper and he looked at me again, he said, Sarah, we need you to get better, because if you don't get better, we're really gonna miss you. And that time I didn't understand the severity of what I was dealing with. But a few weeks later, my referral appointment was up, and I visited the Children's Hospital for an assessment. The assessment took about 3 hours, where I was checked by pediatricians, psychologists, psychiatrists. I was assessed by a dietitian. There was a meeting at the end of the assessment. I was eating merely 100 calories a day. I was starved, and I was numb. So when people were worried around me, I couldn't understand how to feel those emotions anymore. Until my psychiatrist looked at me, and he gave me diagnoses. He said, Sarah, we have diagnosed you with anorexia nervosa, social anxiety, and clinical depression, and we need to put you in a hospital right away. My heart sank to my chest. It was an inpatient unit at the hospital, meaning that I would be living there for my summer. I was signed involuntarily to enter. I told them I wouldn't go, but at that time, being an adolescent, I didn't get the choice. I was involuntarily admitted. I weighed 75 pounds when I entered the treatment center. The goal in the treatment center was to gain weight and to find coping mechanisms and incentives to recover from the illness. But I was still in denial that I even had a problem. And so when people started to insist that I had anorexia, I told them that I was not skinny enough. I told them that my weight isn't low enough to have an illness like that. But denial doesn't work in an involuntary admission. I was forced to eat food. I was forced to gain weight. Those months were one of the hardest few months of my teenage years, and I was trying to understand the essence as to why I was there in the first place. What got me from being a happy child to being diagnosed with anorexia? I couldn't understand where it came from. When September came, I was finally medically stable, and it was time to get ready for discharge. Upon discharge, though, I told my psychiatrist that I was too scared to come back to my old high school. I was afraid of what my friends would think of me, where they would think I went during the summer. I didn't want them to know that I was struggling with something like this. So I told my psychiatrist to write me a letter to go to a new high school. I picked a high school farther than where I lived. It was a high school where I knew not a single person. I wanted it to be a clean, fresh start. I transferred in the middle of September after I got discharged. It was all great in the beginning. There was a lot of incentive in having a clean and fresh start. There were tons of agreements that I had to continuously follow from the treatment center, such as maintaining my weight, completing my meals on time, making sure that I eat all of my meals in the day. I didn't want to return back into this treatment center. At the same time, I wasn't sure I was ready to let go of anorexia. Eating made me feel like a failure, that I was out of control. And a few months later, these feelings intensified. My parents gained suspicion, but they didn't want to believe that I could have relapsed that soon. But unfortunately, I did, and it only got worse. I became more sneaky with my methods of losing weight. I made sure I wouldn't be at home whenever there was food on the table. I made sure to avoid my therapist and to avoid my psychiatrist. A few months passed after my relapse, and I lost all the weight that I gained in the treatment center. But during this relapse, I had to be better. I had to show myself that I was stronger. So rather than eating yogurt and soup a day, I just had yogurt. And then a few weeks later, decided maybe half a yogurt would be enough. A few weeks after that, I had no yogurt at all. I started to avoid food completely.
I'm really dizzy. I black out every time I stand up. I feel like I'm about to fall. I haven't fainted yet, but I'm almost there, I think.
One day, I mustered up all the strength that I could to walk up the stairs to my bedroom. When I got to my bedroom, I fainted, and my parents called 911. I was sent that day in the ambulance to the ER. I was checked by several monitors. I was told that I was at risk for heart failure, and that I had to stay in the cardiac unit of that hospital. A week later, I was visited by the nurse of that treatment center. She told me that she was so sorry that I had to go through this again, that I had to go back into the unit that afternoon. That day I felt hopeless. I was going in circles, never being enough for myself, and as a consequence, having to be confined in 4 walls. In my second treatment admission, I grew so tired of being in there. I thought to myself that eating disorder was hard, but being here was harder. Being told what to do was harder, and that this was anything but control. It was the first time in my life where I gave recovery a chance. I thought recovery couldn't be worse than being here, and I made it my mission to get better. This admission was so much more optimistic. I decided I'd actually listen to my psychiatrist. I would take my medication on time. I would do the therapies. I would go to the sessions. I would be honest with my feelings. I would learn to accept the diagnosis, and I would learn of ways to cope with my past. 4 months later, I was discharged. I was in the treatment for a total of 8 months, and that was my final admission at the inpatient unit, and it was just in time for senior year. I managed to pull through the year. There was a lot of struggle, a lot of ups and downs, but in the end it was worth it. Another big incentive that I worked on in the hospital with my psychiatrist was the possibilities of entering UBC after my grad year. UBC has always been a dream school of mine, ever since I was in elementary school, so that goal was a huge incentive to be discharged. When I found out I was accepted into university, I was so happy. It's so beautiful to see that my hard work and treatment has flourished to this accomplishment. During this time, I was seeing my therapist on a weekly basis. But in the summer, my family and I traveled to Lebanon for a family vacation. But looking back at it now, I don't think I was ever ready to go on a vacation and to be away from a medical support team for that long. I used this time to my advantage, and I began to be manipulative with my family. I couldn't do anything about it, and so I could just lose weight. By the time UBC opened, I returned back to Canada. I was both entering school and experiencing a relapse. When I passed my birthday on October, I was officially 18 years old. 18 meant that I was no longer considered an adolescent in the BC Children's Hospital, and so that meant I wouldn't be able to return back to the unit. This meant that I had more control as an adult. I thought, finally, now I have UBC, I could also regain that control that I've wanted for years. I spent most of my day on campus, avoiding my home, avoiding food, and avoiding a reality I didn't want to admit. I started losing weight drastically at the beginning of September, and in January of 2014, fainted twice in school. I remember coming back home that day my mom seeing me and feeling absolutely helpless. She took me to a meeting at UBC, convincing them that I was no longer medically stable to return back for that semester. That day I was immediately withdrawn, and I was sent to the hospital for medical assessments. I was 68 pounds. My heart was starting to fail, my bones were withering, and I was at risk for developing osteoporosis at the age of 18. Bringing air into my lungs was the most difficult task. My hair was falling out, my skin was dry, and I felt like I was dying. That night when I came home from the hospital, I went into my room, and I sat on my chair, completely exhausted, completely withered. I remember I could feel my heart struggling to beat. I fell asleep on that chair that night, and I had a dream. I was 4 years old in my dream. I had a tiara on my head, and it was my birthday. I was sitting around my family and my friends, and I was getting ready to blow up my cake. I had 2 servings of birthday cake, and I was dancing around like a princess. I started to think about that girl and how beautiful she was. She danced to the beat of her heart. She sang songs with words she never knew to pronounce. She was entertained in her skin. It was her birthday. She was eating cake, and she loved herself. This girl is beautiful. She is strong. She is me. And I couldn't justify why this little girl deserves to starve herself. I couldn't understand why it was okay that this girl be put through so much pain over these years. She didn't deserve to feel this way, as if she had to prove her beauty time and time again. She deserved a life that she's always wanted. She deserves to be happy. In that moment, I saw anorexia for its true colors, because so long as I continued to live, the eating disorder would never be satisfied with the weight on the scale. I was 68 pounds, and that was too big. I was eating nothing, and that was too much. And I thought that the only time I would ever win when I was 6 feet underground, I would be unable to even claim my prize. That day I made a decision that I would honor this girl with all that I had, that I wouldn't fear who I was, and that I wouldn't fear my growth, that I would fight for it instead. That night I went over to my mom, and I told her for the first time that I needed her help. It was then that she knew that I was serious about my recovery, because she's never heard me say that word before. But I told her rather than just trying a recovery this time, which denotes returning back to a previous state, I told her I wanted a discovery instead. I wanted to discover who I was, outside of the illness. I wanted to retrace my steps of being 4 years old, honoring parts of that little girl that made her happy. I wanted to ground myself into who I always was, and I wanted to discover so much more along the way. The next day, I visited my family doctor. When he saw my weight, he was shocked. But I assured him that I was going to get better. That day we both constructed a meal plan. I was adamant about my health, and my whole family was there to support me. However, rather than going to a treatment center this time around, I decided to do an in-home therapy instead. Being at home, I would be surrounded by my loved ones, those who knew me my whole life and knew me before the illness. I had an incredible mom who wouldn't leave my side during my entire treatment, father who loved me and never gave up. I had 3 younger sisters who consistently rooted me on, and I had my big brother always looking out for me and always making me feel like a champion. After a few months of gaining weight, my doctor recommended that I do some exercise to regain some strength in my muscles. Due to drastic weight loss, my muscles wasted away, so my body needed to regain that strength again. And who better, he thought, than my brother Aladdin. My brother was a bodybuilder. He grew up as an athlete and now pursued bodybuilding. And to me, he was the definition of self-love. He cared for his body, for his happiness, for his social well-being. His sport never consumed him. It only enhanced his life. I got to witness how Aladdin flourished in his happiness, how he maintained a healthy lifestyle, and had that facilitate every other aspect of his life. He was socially present, mindfully active, and he was an imperative part of our family. And the fact that he was my big brother was an absolute blessing. When I told Aladdin what my doctor said, he was more than eager to help me. He took me into the gym the following week, and I got to see Aladdin's passions flourish before my eyes. I saw how strong he was, how empowered he felt when he lifted weights. I saw how he honored his body by movement. He was pushing weight. Weight wasn't pushing him. And I think that was a big theme in my life. That was a very therapeutic practice when I was in the gym. And with time, I began to understand the essence of weight training, how I could let it facilitate other areas of my life, like my brother did, alongside continuously increasing my calories and caloric surplus. Consistently gaining weight, started to gain an absolute passion for my health. I had to gain about 50 pounds, and that was going to take a long time. But with dedication, persistence, and a huge support team by my side, I felt unstoppable. What drove me the most was that it was my decision to recover. I wasn't forced into a medical treatment center. This was me. This was my drive to heal, and I was more than excited to honor that little girl inside me. Another change happened in my mentality, which was my outlook on nutrition. I physically felt the strength nutrition offered me, and I began to nourish my body with nutrition, giving it enough food and fuel and energy to be able to do the things in my life that I love doing. All of a sudden, food was not sinful. It was powerful, and I wanted to learn everything about it. I began to do my own research at home. I began to study macronutrients, micronutrients. I learned all the vitamins and all the minerals. I started to apply everything I knew in nutrition to my athleticism, ways that I could empower myself. Nourishment no longer implied weakness. It implied strength, fortitude, and the access to pursue my life. And so that was the start of my passion for nutrition. And I truly believe that understanding the scientific components of my food facilitated a whole new perspective on the way that I saw food. For me, it eliminated the emotional aspect of nutrition. I didn't eat because I was good or because I was bad. My life was finally unfolding, and I was so excited for my future. However, later in 2014, my family experienced a tragedy. On September 24th, 2014, my brother was murdered. And when I lost Aladdin, my world fell apart. Aladdin was my big brother, and he is the reason I'm alive today. Losing him made me feel like I lost myself. In those moments, I wanted to give up. I didn't want to continue if Aladdin wasn't going to be a part of that journey. But I knew what Aladdin would have wanted for me, and that was to take care of myself. At this time, there was so much more to fight for. I don't do this anymore for myself, but I do this for the both of us. And I know that so long as I live, Aladdin lives with me. He is the catalyst, the drive, and the incentive to continuously practice self-love and to take care of my body, to take care of my health, and to always keep fighting. When people ask me how I did it, I tell them, you need to know my brother to understand. During that time, weight training was a therapy. It was a therapy to regain strength, to regain mental fortitude. After some months of grieving, I decided I was ready to return back to school. This time I wanted to pursue something different, something that applied to my life more and more each day, and that was my passion for nutrition. From there on, my passions were being applied into my academics, and I was excelling in the sport that my brother introduced me to. Over the next year, I cultivated my growth by the passions that I wore on my sleeve. I took stories and pieces from myself to discover a whole new person that's always been within me. I decided to get better, and I decided to take my health into my own hands. I'm where I am today because I no longer fear my skin. I don't feel the need to find anorexia for pleasure, for comfort, for validation. I have found the confidence to validate my own skin and not to be driven by superficial needs to confirm my worth. I put my health and my happiness first, and I gave myself permission to have them both align. Today marks 3 years from beginning my recovery, and this journey has been incredible. I hope that this video may find any of you in your time of need to remind you all what you are capable of doing. Whether you struggle with an eating disorder or not, I hope that you can find themes in my journey that resonate with you. I hope that they empower you, that they strengthen you, and they push you to never, ever give up on yourself. Stop searching out there for the answers that are so much closer to home than you think. And if you take just one message from my video today, I hope that it be this: love yourself for all that you are and all that you will become. Thank you all so much for giving me the chance to share my story and for sending me so much love and support along the way. I hope to see you guys in the near future with only positivity and love for 2017. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Stay strong, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys.